Diane Arbus was my mother, which means that the way in which I knew her was in terms of a kind of familiarity that I took for granted, as you have to if you live with somebody. The way I knew her photographs, I mean, some of them still to me, I remember as torn pieces of paper that she would bring back from the darkroom. I remember them tacked on walls, you know, around her bed or on this wooden screen she had in one place we lived. And I had an enormous sense that photography was a kind of secret of hers. I don't mean that the process was secret or that she was secretive about it, because she really loved to tell about it. And she loved to tell about sort of where she'd gone and who she'd been with, and but that something about what happened when she was there was a secret. I think it may have something to do with the way in which she grew up. She grew up in New York, mostly on Central Park West. And her father owned Rusticks, which was this huge Fifth Avenue department store. And there was a sense about her whole childhood. And again, I mean, as I heard it from her, it sort of filtered in so that now I don't know, I really feel like I knew it. I mean, I used to feel as a kid like I'd been there. There was an enormous sense of what was prohibited. And I think that photographing for her had enormously to do with being able to discover that prohibitions didn't apply. In July 1971, my mother committed suicide. And shortly after that, Marvin Israel, a very close friend of hers, and I felt that we wanted to do a book of her work together. So we began collecting not just the pictures, but sort of whatever material we could find. In 1970, she had given a class in West Beth, which was where she lived. And we found out that one of the students in that class was a Japanese photographer named Iko Narahara, who admired Diane's work enormously. The problem was that he barely spoke any English at all. So what he had done was to go to the classes and bring along a tape recorder to record everything that was said, so that afterwards he could go home and see if he could try and understand it. So he lent us those tapes. The tapes were of very poor quality, so we asked Mary Claire Costello, who was a friend of Diane's, to read Diane's own words over glimpses of Diane's photographs.
My favorite thing is to go where I've never been. For me, there's something just about going into somebody else's house. When it comes time to go, if I have to take a bus to somewhere or if I have to take a cab uptown, it's like I've got a blind date in a sense. It's always seemed something like that to me. And sometimes I have a sinking feeling of, oh God, it's time and I really don't want to go. And then once I'm on my way, something terrific takes over about the sort of queasiness of it and how there's absolutely no method for control. If I were just curious, it would be very hard to say to someone, I want to come to your house and have you talk to me and tell me the story of your life. I mean, people are going to say you're crazy. Plus, they're going to keep mighty guarded. But the camera is a kind of license. And for a lot of people, they want to be paid that much attention. And that's a reasonable kind of attention to be paid. Actually, they tend to like me. I'm extremely likable with them. I think I'm kind of two-faced. I'm very ingratiating. It really kind of annoys me. I'm just sort of a little too nice. Everything is, oh. And I hear myself saying, how terrific. And here's this woman making a face. I really mean it's terrific. I don't mean I wish I looked like that. I don't mean I wish my children looked like that. I don't mean in my private life I want to kiss you, but I mean that's amazingly, undeniably something. There are always two things that happen. One is recognition, and the other is that it's totally peculiar. But there's some sense in which I always identify with them. Everybody has that thing where they need to look one way, but they come out looking another way. And that's what people observe. You see somebody on the street, and essentially what you notice about them is the flaw. It's just extraordinary that we should have been given these peculiarities, and not content with what we were given, we create a whole other set. Our whole guise is like giving a sign to the world to think of us in a certain way. But there's a point between what you want people to know about you and what you can't help people knowing about you. And that has to do with what I've always called the gap between intention and effect. I mean, if you scrutinize reality closely enough, if in some way you really, really get to it, it becomes fantastic. You know, it really is totally fantastic that we look like this, and you sometimes see that very clearly in a photograph. Something is ironic in the world, and it has to do with the fact that what you intend never comes out like you intend it. What I'm trying to describe is that it's impossible to get out of your skin into somebody else's. And that's what all this is a little bit about. That somebody else's tragedy is not the same as your own. Another thing is a photograph has to be specific. I remember a long time ago when I first began to photograph, I thought there are an awful lot of people in the world and it's going to be terribly hard to photograph all of them. So if I photograph some kind of generalized human being, everybody will recognize it. It'll be like what they used to call the common man, or something like that. It was my teacher, Lisette Model, who finally made it clear to me that the more specific you are, the more general it'll be. You really have to face that thing. And there are certain evasions, certain nicenesses that I think you have to get out of. The process itself has a kind of exactitude, a kind of scrutiny that we're not normally subject to. I mean, that we don't subject each other to. We're nicer to each other than the intervention of the camera is going to make us. It's a little bit cold, a little bit harsh. Now, I don't mean to say that all photographs have to be mean. Sometimes they show something really nicer, in fact, than what you felt, or oddly different. But in a way, this scrutiny has to do with not evading facts, not evading what it really looks like. Freaks was a thing I photographed a lot. It was one of the first things I photographed, and it had a terrific kind of excitement for me. I just used to adore them. I still do adore some of them. I don't quite mean they're my best friends, but they made me feel a mixture of shame and awe. There's a quality of legend about freaks, like a person in a fairy tale who stops you and demands that you answer a riddle. I mean, if you've ever spoken to someone with two heads, you know they know something you don't. Most people go through life dreading they'll have a traumatic experience. Freaks were born with their trauma. They've already passed their test in life. They're aristocrats. I'm very little drawn to photographing people that are known, or even subjects that are known. They fascinate me when I've barely heard of them, and the minute they get public, I become terribly blank about them.